Hey folks, welcome to another online meetup. My name is Max Katz, and I had education and community for Okta Workflows. And today's topic is our monthly getting started online meetup. So we run this once a month on the second Tuesday of the month. And today's specific topic is how to create users from Okta, how to create users in Okta from a Google form. All right. So again, what we'll do is we'll cover the fundamentals of Okta Workflows as we build this automation. All right. So that's kind of how all these getting started events are structured. So this event is being recorded, and then the replay will be available on exactly the same page once we're done, right after we end the live session. I will also upload this to YouTube, and you'll get a message tomorrow with a link to YouTube and some other resources. Okay. And before we jump into the building the flow, please follow us on Crowdcast, and then you'll be notified when we go live. And so you'll get a message a few seconds before we go live saying, "Hey," and you might see an interesting event and you can join. Also check out, we have upcoming events on our channel, so register for those. And as always, if you have any ideas or topics that we should cover in the future, please let me know. And of course, also, if you have any questions, my email in that first column. So I always like getting emails with questions or any other stuff. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. All right. Let me see if there may be any questions, and then if not, we will go ahead and get started. So give me a sec here. Well, I don't see questions, so that's good. But again, put the questions in the chat. There is also a separate Q&A section on the right-hand side, so you can also put questions there if you would like. All right. Let's see here. Oh, also, sorry, one last thing before I get. There are two links in the chat that I sent before I started the event. So the first link is specifically for this online meetup. So I'll talk about it in just a second. But then the second link is a KB article on our support side that has all the previous getting started videos, right? So as I said, I do this every month. And if you ever need to go back, so they're also on our YouTube channel, right? And the page that I shared actually links to YouTube, but it's just one page with all the other getting started videos that we did in the past, right? So you want to check it out. That's the link. All right. So let me. You know what? I forgot to share my other screen. So give me a sec here. Let's see, share screen. All right. All right, I'm just going to wait here for this for a second to update. All right. Cool. All right. So let's get started. Anyhow, so this is, I'm in Workflows, or I'm in the dashboard or in the homepage, actually in the flows page, and I'm going to create a new flow. And there it says new flow. I'm going to click on the button to create a new flow. And I'm going to give this a name right away. So we'll call this create users in Okta. This is fine, I think. And then we can give it a description. It's usually a good idea. Create users in Okta from a Google form. All right. So that's the description. I'm also going to enable this option. This is going to help me test the flow and also debug the flow if I need to. And I'm going to talk about this also in just in a few minutes. Okay, so I created a new flow. And so usually the first step when you create a flow is how do you trigger a flow, right? Now, as I just said a minute ago, I shared the link with all the other getting started videos. And I believe in most of them, I either use um, uh, I either start a flow with an event, right? So when an event happens in your organization, right? So you can trigger a flow. That's number one. And number two is on schedule, right? So these are the two most common ways you trigger a flow. Again, when an event happens in your organization. So for example, a user activated or user deactivated, and then on schedule. So all the videos that the page with the link I shared, I believe most of them, if not all of them, either use the schedule or an event. And so, but this time, we're going to trigger a flow in a different way. Is that via an API endpoint? So what you can do is you can have a third system calling an API endpoint, which in turn calls a flow. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. And so I'm going to click Add Event. And then under Okta Apps, I'm going to select API endpoint right here. All right. And then I see this API endpoint settings dialog. I'm going to select this option, secure with client token, so we want to have security. And now notice that the alias here, this is blank. So what I need to do is I need to actually close this, and I need to save. And then I see this card. This is the API endpoint card. Now, I'm going to go back. If you there is an endpoint settings icon at the bottom of the card. If you click on it again, you'll see the same dialog, but now you have the alias information. So you need to save first for that ID or that alias to be generated. Okay, but let's look at this for a second. So we're going to call this flow via an API endpoint. So again, a third-party system, we're gonna give it a URL, and it's going to call that URL. And then we can see that this is the headers information from that request. There's the body information and the query information. So that system will send headers, of course, body and query. And then if we need to, we can view or get that information. Okay. And of course, that's usually what happens, right? That other system will send some information to us, and then we want to do something with that information. Okay. So again, usually when you start a flow, how do you trigger it, right? So again, in this particular example, we're using API endpoint. And then the other most common ways are when an event happens. Again, so something, password change, user activated, or whatever system, whatever event is supported by the underlying connector you're using, you can use that event. And also on schedule. So you can set the flow to run maybe every hour, maybe every day, maybe every week. And then there's also, of course, anything in between. All right. But this is our endpoint. Now, so this is good. Now, let's look at the form. So I mentioned we're going to be using Google Forms. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with a Google form. You probably submitted a Google form at some point. And so this is how the form looks. Okay, so very straightforward. I just get the first name, I have the last name, and I have the email, right? When I click submit, again, I want to send the information to my flow, and then of course, in turn, trigger the flow. Now, so when once I build this form, how do I connect the submission to that? So what you can do, and so I know this is a no-code platform, but this is one area or one place where you do need to look at some code. We're not going to write any code, but you can add like a function or a script to your Google form, and this is the script that I have. Now you can also get the script from this template. So there is a template, and that's the button that you see on your screen. Where it says submit form data to an Okta Workflows API endpoint, it will take you to this page. And then this page has the script. If I scroll down, has the script that you need to copy. So into your form. But what it does is that it collects all the fields from the form, and that's what this section does here. And then at the end, it submits a request to a URL. Now, the only thing we need to do is we need to set the actual URL, right? And that's the um, sort of the callback URL. And I'm going to go back to workflows, and then that's in settings, the invoke URL. So I'm going to copy it. Copy the URL, close, and go back here and delete this portion and paste the URL. Okay, so that's really all you need to do. Again, you can copy the whole script from that page, and you only need to change the URL, right? So let me save. There's some other, there are a few other steps you need to do here. When I say steps, it's more of a step, is that you need to create a trigger, right? And you have to say that when the form is submitted, you call that script, okay? And again, the document explains how to do that, but that's the other step you need to take. All right, let's go back here, and let's actually see, give this a try and see how it works. Our flow doesn't do anything yet, besides just calling this, but that's enough for us to actually test. I'm going to turn the flow on. And if you remember, you saw this option before. It says save all data that passes through the flow. So again, this is going to show me each flow execution, and it will help me debug or test the flow. But let's submit the form. So I'm going to just enter some information here. And I'm going to click submit, right? And so I submitted the form. And I'm going to go to workflows, and I'm going to go to execution history. And we can see there is one success, right? So I submitted the form, right? It ran the script on Google Form side. It triggered the URL. And then this is the sort of the request that I get. And notice here, so this is the headers information. Right here is the body information. And usually you can see there are these two arrows, so you can click on them and it will expand and you can see the information. So this is the information that I received from Google Forms. All right, so if I was to do this again, for example, Joe, right, and click submit and go back to workflows. And let's see here. Sometimes you need to do this. Okay, so we can see there is a second execution now. And if I look at the information, now, of course, it says Joe, right? So this is what this option does, the save all data, right? So you can see the data. It saves the data for each execution, right? If you don't save the data, I mean, the flow will still run, but you won't see the data for each execution. All right. All right, so what we did here is that we learned how to trigger a flow. So I know I said this, but I'll repeat it again. Usually the first thing you do is how do you trigger a flow? So in this particular example, we are using an API endpoint. Other two ways we can do with on schedule. So you can run the flow every some number of minutes, hours, or days, and then based on an event, if an event happens. And I'll again, when I say an event in your system, what it means is that workflows supports over 50 connectors to other systems. And so when I say an event, that's an event in that system, okay? So whatever a connector supports, you can trigger a flow based on the event that the connector supports, okay? All right, so let's go back here. Now, if I go back to history, and I look at the body here. So I need this information to create a user. So what I need to do is I get this JSON, and I would like to retrieve this information. Okay. So I'm going to, as the next step in the flow, I'm going to use a function. Now, um, functions, these are steps that create, edit, and manipulate data. Okay, so you can see the various categories. You can do branching, error handling, flow control. You can work with text, numbers, true, false, date and time, object, file, list, and some other things here. So that's a function in a flow. Now the one I'm going to use is in the object category, and I'm going to use get multiple, right? And so what it does, it allows me to retrieve data from a JSON object. Now, I'm going to go back here for a second again, just to show you. So this is the JSON that I get, right? This is the JSON. And I need to retrieve the first name, last name, and email. Okay. So how do I get the object here? And this is my favorite capability in workflows, that you take a field from a card, from a previous card, or any other, doesn't need to be just a previous, it can be any other card before this card, and just connect it like this. All right. Let me show you this to you again. I take this field and I just drag and drop it and connect it like this. Okay, and that's how you pass data from card to card. And now next you specify the keys. So the first is first name. Now you have to be careful that the key is case sensitive. It has to match exactly. Okay, and then I'm going to say last name. And then I'm going to do this on purpose. I'm going to misspell. I'm going to say email one. Okay. Now, what I can do is I can run this whole flow again, submit a form, and check this. But you can also test individual cards without running the entire flow. And to do that, first I'm going to go to history again, and I'm going to copy this JSON, and you can click copy to clipboard. And let's go back. And then I'm going to test this card. And look, there's a test this card button at the bottom. So every card will have this. I'm going to click this. And you enter sample JSON object here. And you click test. And then notice what happens is that it retrieved Joe, right, the last name, and then the email. Now, the email is blank because I misspelled the key. Right? And I did this on purpose just to show you. But this is a really good idea to test cards individually before you test the entire flow, right? But this is, oh, I see that I misspelled the key, so I need to go and fix it before running the entire flow. Now, to do that, there are two ways to do this, is that you can click this error, and this is the type of the field, right? It's a text. And then you click customize, and you can rename it this way, right? So let's email, save. Another way you can do is you can click the gear and then click edit card and then do the same thing by clicking this pencil. All right. But let's try this again. I still have the JSON object in my clipboard, and I'm going to click test, and now it works. Right. So now I have the correct key. All right. Now let's run now the entire flow one more time. So I'm going to submit this again. Jessica, and then click. Did I save everything? Yes, I saved. Click submit. All right, let's go to. Let's see here. Okay, and this is the third run. Now, again, this is the first card, and then the data is passed to get multiple, and then we can see that these keys, right, are retrieved. We have the information. All right, so we now can trigger a flow via an API endpoint. We have a card that retrieves information from a JSON object. We tested the card, and then we tested the entire flow as well. Now, the next step is to create a user in Okta. Now, in this case, I'm going to use an app action. Now, as I said before, a function, these are various categories of steps that allow you to create, manipulate, and edit data. And now an app action allows you to call external systems. Or these are the connectors, and I mentioned connectors before. These are the connectors that Okta Workflows has out of the box, right? And so you can call various actions on these connectors. And every connector is going to support different actions. Now, in this case, I'm going to choose the Okta one. And now you can see this is the list of all the actions that the connector supports. Now, just to give you an example, let's look at Gmail, for example, right? And then you can see all the actions that the Gmail connector supports. Okay. Now let's go back. Let's go to Okta, and I want to use the one to create a user, so you can search. I mean, it's a long list, so of course you can scroll, but you can also just type create, and then we get create user. And now, some connectors might have some options you need to set. I'm just going to say without credentials and click save. Okay. Now, and then also, in addition, it might ask you what inputs you want to show on the card. And I've got 4 inputs selected here by default, which are required. You can select other inputs. And then if you scroll, there are also outputs. So I'm going to keep the outputs as is. But let me just show you. Let's say I want to use middle name as well. I click save, right? And if I need to go back and say, no, I don't need to submit middle name. So I'm going to click the gear icon. And I'm going to click choose fields and uncheck and click save, right? Now, because we're connecting to Okta, or if you're using any other connector, you also need to create a connection. Now, I'm not going to show you how to create a connection, but the connection information is right here. So I have a connection that I'm using. You can create multiple connections if you would like. One can be to a production environment, maybe one can be to a testing environment, to a development environment. And every connector has slightly different steps, just depending on the actual connector, what information you need. Some use an API key. Some use basic authentication. Some connectors use OAuth type authentication. Again, just really depends on the connector. But this is the connector information right here. All right, so I'm just gonna save. All right, so I got the card, and I also like to test just to make sure I can create a user in Okta, before using it in the flow. And so I'm going to click the test button here, and then I'm going to say at okta.com, and then Jessica again, and then we'll use green, and we'll use the, all right, and then click test. All right, and then I get those information back. This is a good sign. I don't see any errors. The user was created. Let me click close. Let me go to my Okta. It signed me out. Let me go to my Okta admin dashboard. I'm just going to sign in back. Give me a sec here. I have to find the notification on my phone. All right. And I've got right here, Jessica Green was created, right? So I'm going to actually delete Jessica because I'm going to create Jessica again. So I'm going to deactivate first and then delete. Let's see here. All right, Jessica was deleted. All right. So we're back here. So the card works. That's great. So now I need to pass data from this card to create users. So I'm going to take the first name and connect it to first name, and then last name, and then the email is going to go into username and also primary email. All right. I'm going to save, and I'm ready to test the flow. So let's go back to the Google form, and we'll use Jessica again. I don't know, let's give her another name. And at okta.com and click submit, and then go to workflows, execution history, and we can see the request right here, and we can see now that the user was created. If I go back to my admin and refresh, and then you can see that the user was created. All right. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show you. Let me see if there are any questions, and then I'll go back and kind of review what we did. So there's a question. Could you tell me what the trigger for this workflow? So yes. So the question is, what is the trigger for this workflow? So it's the API endpoint, right? Now, but what really happens is that the form, right? So if I go back here, so the form, when I click the form, it calls the script, right? So it calls the script, right? It collects the data from the form. This is this JavaScript to collect the data, and then it makes right here. It makes a call with information to this API endpoint, right? And this API endpoint just happens to be the flow, and then it triggers the flow, and then all the information that it collected from the form is available here. So that's what triggers the flow, right? I'm actually gonna, I know I have just a few minutes left, but I'm gonna create a new flow and just show you the other two options that I know I talked about them before, but just to show you, so you see how the other options look. All right. But before I do that, so what we did again, we submit the form, it triggers, calls an API endpoint, which in turn triggers this flow. We look at the JSON body field, we retrieve the first name, last name, and email, and then we also use the Okta connector to call the create user action and create a user. Okay, and so I showed you how to pass data from card to card. We also tested individual cards, and we also tested the entire flow. And I know it's a very sort of small flow with just basically 3 steps, but we used a function card, which again manipulates data, creates data, manipulates data, and then we also use an app action. So that was a function step, and this is an app action step, which is allows you to sort of interact or call other services for which there is a connector in Okta Workflows. All right. Now, just to quickly, if you want to call an API for which there is no connector, you can still do that. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, let me delete this. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there is API connector, and this allows you to call any other API. API that's not available from these connectors. All right. But let me exit out, and just to show you quickly, I know we have like 1 or 2 minutes left. I created a new flow, and then if I wanted to do this on schedule, I would click the schedule, right? And then I can configure to run, as often as every 5 minutes, right? So that's option number 1 here. Okay, so we'll save this schedule 1, right? And if I go back to my folder, I can create a new flow, and then I want to run this on an event. And so again, this is tied to a connector. So if I select Okta, there's a long list of events on which you can trigger a flow. So I don't know, application updated, application deleted. If I search for user activated, user added to groups, there are a lot of different events on which you can call a flow. So if I select user activated, just I'm going to show you right? This is the card. This is all the information that the event makes available. But it doesn't need to be Okta, of course. If I want to maybe I don't know, let's see, Google Drive maybe, right? So the connector supports less events, but you can call a flow when a file is created, a file is updated, a folder is created, and a few other actions here or events. Okay, so again, every connector is going to support different events, but those are the three main ways you trigger a flow. So again, event, schedule, and then the API endpoint, what I showed you in the example. And I know I'll just repeat myself again, but if you check out the second link in the chat that I shared, it has links to all the other videos, and it said I think most of them use either the schedule or the event option to trigger a flow. So you want to see how that works, check out those recordings. All right. All right. Cool. Well, let me know if you have any more questions. I like to keep this session short. I know everyone is busy, so it's about 30, maybe a few minutes after past half hour. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. If you have any questions after the, let me move the slide. If you have any questions after this event, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I'm going to put my email there. It's in the first column. And again, you'll get a message tomorrow with links to the recordings and other links, other resources that I mentioned in this video. All right. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for joining today, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.